Hello, my name is Kai, and I am a bit of a rambler. I like to travel, learn, and tell stories. Today, I want to talk about fasting because it pretty much changed my whole life. And this isn't a recommendation that you do it or anything like that. I just want to tell my story about fasting. And when I say fasting, I mean not eating food, drinking water, and allowing my body to metabolize extra weight reserves on my body. So, as with most self-experiments and other experiments I tried out, this started after I was living in China and was working less than 20 hours a week and had a ton of extra time. So I was trying all sorts of new time-consuming activities like YouTube, which I never really got into until finally I had all this time on my hands. And I was like, maybe it's time to dive into this YouTube thing I keep thinking about. Of course, I'd watched a few videos, but I didn't know any channels or anything. So I started watching a bunch of stuff, and I'd always been interested in stories of fasting. Like in a lot of religions, whoever the divine one is will fast for a long time, and it gives them some spiritual purity or whatever. And it's also often connected to health. Like in religious texts, they also mention that it's healthy to fast in some way or another. I've always thought that was interesting, like as an offhand thing. And then if you go on YouTube and type in fasting, there's a billion videos about fasting. So I stumbled across one somehow. And first of all, I want to say that don't trust anything anybody says on YouTube. Or ever. But this was an interesting rabbit hole for me to fall into because I was interested in the topic in general. I knew absolutely zero people in real life who had ever done it. But it did seem supported by science that you don't need to eat every day, that each pound of fat has 4,000 calories or 3,500 calories. You can go some extended time without eating, and it does have physiological effects on your body. So after I looked that up, I thought I would just watch every video about fasting that was on YouTube and wasn't obviously ridiculous, and try to collect and collate useful information that I could verify later. So I mainly ended up watching people doing sort of time-lapse videos over a few days or a week, and this one guy a month of fasting. And again, you don't know if you can trust that they're really doing it. You don't want to believe any of their conclusions because it's just a subjective case study. But these people appeared to be fasting. They weren't saying anything crazy except I feel better, or I feel too tired, I'm going to go eat a hamburger. But it was really interesting watching all of these people fast, or apparently fast, according to these time-lapse videos. The guy who did it for a month lost 100 pounds, 100-something pounds. He lost a lot of weight. And he was apparently, again, just water fasting. And then when I looked it up, there are reported cases of people not eating for a month because they have extra weight, and there's 3,000 to 4,000 calories in every pound of fat your human body carries. So most people of normal weight, the numbers are over 9 out of 10 people, can fast or water fast, not eat food and just drink water for an extended period of time. That's the base that I was starting from, just that not eating didn't mean you were starving immediately. And there are a lot of physiological processes to look at and go through, and that's what interested me. That it was just possible to stop eating for a while, and it wasn't necessarily harmful for your body. If you stop eating all the way past all of your reserves of fat, yes, that's starvation, and that is harmful because then your body starts eating critical tissue. But you don't need to do that. Not eating for a little while is not necessarily unhealthy. And importantly for me, There were never any scientific articles saying it was unhealthy. Now, if you have ever dabbled with eating issues or any kind of body weight issues or anything like that, don't jump into fasting at all. Like, I'm fine with my body and how it came about, so I felt comfortable experimenting with this. And I very much considered that to make sure I wasn't doing this so that I could look just a little bit thinner, like for outside approval. I was sure after my consideration that I was doing this because I was interested in the process of not eating scientifically without any even flirtation with starvation. I wanted to learn more about not eating scientifically and what that did to the body. So when I decided to look into not eating scientifically, I did what I do with most topics, which is absorb as much information as I can, whether I understand it or not, all at one time in a binge of knowledge. Organize and verify the information, and then experiment with the known quantities and variables. So I watched a bunch of videos from doctors. I looked up, do they use this as medicine, a medicinal curative somewhere? And they do, like in Russia and Germany, there are fasting hospitals, and you go there and they monitor you very carefully and tell you the amount of time to fast to deal with certain maladies that seem to be remedied by fasting, or at least remedied by your body when it doesn't have to worry about ingestion and digestion. And especially are traditionally remedied. These fasting is as old as, those religious texts 7,000 years ago. So after I learned all the basics of ketosis and the calories that a pound of fat has, and how your body does not degrade if you're not eating scientifically for a period of time and you have the extra calories within you, I decided to start at the beginning and read the Western awakening to fasting, which can kind of be credited to this guy named Herbert Shelton, who wrote this really interesting book called Sunbathing and Fasting, I think. And it's not a treatise on how to cure things. That's like his foreword. Right in the beginning, Shelton says, fasting is not a curative. It's not a remedy. It's not a medicine. What fasting does is allow you to get out of the way of the natural processes of your body, which can effectively deal with many ailments. And that's right up top of at least the fasting section. It might be in the beginning of the book. I didn't read the sunbathing part. Partly because of my super pale skin, but also I was just much more interested in the fasting. And the fasting section does include a medical description of what happens to the body under fasting, as far as he understood 100 years ago or whatever, how fasting affected the body. But much more interestingly to me was Shelton presented case studies and all of his anecdotes from his entire 40-year medical career. And he took, apparently, meticulous notes throughout his career with every patient he helped fast. And he wrote about every single patient that he allowed to be cured via fasting, that he educated about fasting, and then monitored them as they fasted for a period of time for various ailments and marked what effect it had on the ailments. And in some of them, he writes that it didn't do much except stabilize the patient, but the disease didn't go away. And then for quite an array of diseases like diabetes, epilepsy, a lot of surprising conditions did appear to be positively affected from fasting with zero side effects to the patient. Epilepsy was an interesting one, and there's actually a modern corollary study on fasting, scientifically improving the symptoms of epilepsy or alleviating the more severe symptoms of epilepsy, and in some cases, removing epilepsy, or rather removing all the symptoms of epilepsy. So every time I read one of his success stories, I would see if there was a scientific study in the modern times, because he wrote that book. I'm just going to check. Oh, you know what? I was wrong. It's only 1950 that he wrote that book. That's how he had so many of these measurements that I was just wondering if it was in Civil War times. Why was he able to record so much so well? That's why, because he wrote the book in 1950. But it wasn't a huge, even idea in Western medicine or Western culture until he wrote that book. And that's how a lot of people got interested in it, so I thought I would read the book. But whenever I saw one of his case studies and he mentioned how it helped some condition, I would look for a similar corollary study in modern times. And I didn't always find them. It seems like it's difficult to convince people to fund a study for not eating. But all of the studies I did find seemed to corroborate what Shelton was saying, that it wasn't dangerous for your body to fast as long as you had the extra weight and you had enough water and a stress-free environment and all this stuff. Like you weren't in any immediate danger from not eating for as long as you had those reserves in your body. And again, not universal. You can go to a doctor first. They can check your levels, see how you respond to ketosis, all that kind of stuff. But that was, again, very interesting to me that modern science was agreeing with this guy who wrote a book 70 years ago who said that you could not eat and be healthy. And it would even help you if you had certain medical conditions. So I read through his whole book, and it was really interesting to me. And I compared it to all those studies I talked about and just all the regular studies, and the highest number of studies about fasting in modern times since 2000, I'll say, are about how it's not starvation and it's not dangerous. It's just not eating for a while, and that's why you gain fat, because the fat is meant to be used by your body in times without food. It took a lot of reading, a lot of peer-reviewed articles, a lot of videos, and a lot of dictionaries, but I was eventually convinced that it wasn't as dangerous as especially the American culture would have me believe, because I was like, well, if I'm not eating, then I'm starving. And that's not true. Starving is a very different physiological process. Starving means you have no more calories in reserve and your body is cannibalizing its critical tissues and nutrients it needs for fundamental functions. Fasting is simply not eating while your body has a reserve of calories internally that it can use for sustenance and nutrition without compromising any physiological functions. So after I confirmed via scientific literature and textbooks that fasting was safe as long as you're not starving yourself, I contacted one of the hospitals in Germany and just asked them a few basic questions, like, can you fast and it is safe? And they were like, yep, it's safe. We've been doing it for hundreds of years. So then I had, again anecdotal, but external confirmation that just, yeah, this is a thing that people do. And modern science says you can do it. And everybody says the same thing. Anybody familiar with fasting, the first thing they say, because they could tell I don't know what I was talking about, was, this is not starvation. Starvation is if you have no reserve calories or weight on your body, and your body is cannibalizing critical tissues to maintain function. That's not fasting. What fasting is using internal reserves of calories, usually stored in fat, as sustenance during a period of not eating. So everyone was super clear on that. Every scientific article, every hospital I contacted, they wanted to make real sure that I understood, if you don't have fat on your body, don't not eat. That's not healthy. It's for the weight you have. Once you run out of that weight, then you are starving, and that's not fasting. So I liked that everyone was so cautious and so very clearly delineative between those two processes. So by this point, I was pretty convinced that fasting could be safe. Now, I was jogging a lot and exercising, but I was also eating and drinking thousands of calories a day in China, for sure. I was having buffets all the time. I was having barbecue nights every night or hot pot. I was drinking 10 to 20 beers very often. And I was probably the heaviest I've ever been, and wasn't very heavy because I was jogging all the time, but I definitely was carrying some extra weight. And I figured, hey, this is the best time to try out fasting. I certainly have enough extra weight. I'll say on the higher side, if I consumed 2,500 of those calories, and your body consumes less calories from each pound of fat the longer you fast, don't eat, then I have weeks of calories internally in reserve. So I decided to try it. I decided that I would start with a 24-hour fast, I would see how I felt, and I would go from there. And it was an interesting first time not eating. I don't think up until that point I had ever not eaten. And since I had been in China, I was eating constantly, like 15 times a day. I wasn't into one meal a day yet. I was just eating all day, every day. Even when I went on a school trip once and got on a plane, like, they have snacks on the plane, my digestive tract in 25 years of life, or however long it was, had never been clear of food. And as I went on, like that first day, I didn't get hunger pangs, but I didn't have any pain, but I had pangs, P-A-N-G, like, oh, I'd like to eat right now. But the pangs came at breakfast, and then they went away, and then they showed up at lunch, and I was like, oh, I'll go, oh, no, I'm not eating today. And then they went away again, and then it was dinner time, and they showed up, and I was like, oh, not eating. And then they went away, and I was like, that's weird how strong my hunger cravings were, and then much more strange was how rapidly they went away. So I looked that up, and there's a lot of data actually on hunger times specifically, and as far as I understand, they're mostly mental. You're going to be slightly hungry, if you don't eat for a very long time, but those strong feelings in the morning where you're like, okay, I got to get something in me, that's often scientifically because you've conditioned your body to ingest calories at certain times of the day. So if you eat your breakfast at 8 a.m. every morning, at 8 a.m., you will be your most hungry. And then after 8 a.m. goes away, you'll get less hungry, and then you won't be very hungry. If you're eating normally, if you skip one meal, you'll get hungry exactly at the time you usually eat, and then you get less hungry. And then at your next usual meal time, noon, let's say, like me, I'd get really hungry, and then after noon, like after the time passed by, my body was just like, all right, whatever, we'll get it next time. And after a few days, those go away. So I didn't have hunger cravings at the same time. Well, I'll get into that, but it was interesting to me because I could feel the cravings come up and then very swiftly go away. And I'd look at my body and I'd be like, well, no, this is like I'm holding 12,000 calories in my hands on my belly. So, and I have plenty more where that came from. So I'm definitely not actually starving. I'm just really hungry at this one moment in time, and then it goes away. And like I said, I read some studies that say that's exactly how hunger works. If you eat breakfast at 8 a.m., then you are hungry at 8 a.m. If you eat breakfast at 9 a.m. every day, then you will get hungry at 9 a.m. If you eat breakfast at 11 a.m., you will get hungry at 11 a.m. But after that usual timing, if you don't eat, your hunger will go away until the next time you usually eat. It's very strongly correlated to whatever time you have given yourself to eat. And now I do the one meal a day, and I don't even get hungry if I skip a day. But if I get hungry, it's only at the one meal a day time window, 4 to 8 p.m. usually, something like that, or 7 to 11 p.m. But that's how I learned that hunger cravings are largely mental. You determine when you get hungry by the time that you eat. So if you usually have a snack before lunch, you're going to get hungry for the snack and you'll get hungry for the lunchtime because those are set times you've trained yourself to eat food. So your body's saying, hey, where's the food? But your body isn't actually requiring calories at that point. You've trained your stomach to get ready for the food coming in. So that's, for me anyway, that's what those hunger cravings are, because mine went away once I tried the longer fasts, which, let me get into that. Mine went away very quickly. And I changed them also. I tried this. I ate my breakfast later and then fasted, and then the hunger pangs were exactly at 11 o'clock or 9:30. They were at some different time. I marked it down when I did it. But that was pretty interesting to find out that if you have enough food generally, then hunger times, the times you get hungry, are mostly a self-imposed mental regimen that you can alter at will. And of course, it's not easy for everyone. Some people have more difficulty moving those windows. But scientifically, the times you feel hungry, if you normally have enough food, the times you feel hungry are determined by the times you put food into your body, not when your body requires calories. So, back to my first 24-hour fast. Like I said, very interesting. I noticed a lot of things very quickly. I usually eat snacks the whole day, or I did at that time. I was eating snacks all day. I had 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and in between I was eating stuff. I ate snacks and all the time. And that first 24-hour fast I did, I experienced all of the symptoms of fasting immediately and simultaneously, and it was very bizarre because I'd never experienced that before. So I was like a little loopy, definitely not fuzzy, because I worked that day and I had very clarity while I was working. But when I laid down on my bed, my body was just comfortably at rest. I wasn't bouncing my foot or my leg, and nothing. A lot of normal things that I considered normal with the body just weren't happening, like bouncing my leg when I was sitting or moving around while I was playing a video game or stuff like that. Just my body was much calmer than usual. I noticed things were different, but it was all happening at the same time, and I'd never not experienced those things happening. So I'm going to elucidate those more when I move on to the 3-day fast, which is coming up next, because that's when I really noticed all of these things in my body that weren't happening, that had happened my whole life, and it was very, very interesting. I kept notes for my 3-day fast after I realized I didn't record anything during the 1-day fast. Anyway, 24 hours comes and goes. I get hungry at my 3 meal times, my main meal times, and then I'm kind of hungry, but I played a video game, I watched YouTube videos, and I made it the 24 hours pretty easily. I didn't eat from one morning at 8 a.m. to the next morning at 8 a.m. And the next morning at 8 a.m., I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, it's been a full day since you have eaten anything. And I felt completely fine. I felt good. I felt like I just woke up from a nice sleep. I did notice it was very easy for me to sleep also. So I went outside for a walk, and I was like, wow, I don't feel hungry. I feel fine. I'm not, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't eat for a day. No, my body was totally okay. I just felt like the next day was there. Here's the next day. And even though my body was like, hey man, we're fine, I intellectually thought, no, it's been 24 hours. I'm going to eat something. I should eat something because it's been so long since I've eaten. And I had the exact same amount of slightly extra weight that I had before, and nothing about my body seemed different. And like I said, I felt totally fine, but I psyched myself out, and out of anxiety, I went to a bakery and bought, I remember it very clearly, this small box of sugary pineapple-filled pastries that are very popular snacks in China. And I had got them a couple times before, and I bit into it, and I was like, whoa, that is way sweeter than I remember. And then I just ate the whole thing, and then I was sick almost immediately. And my body was like, oh God, why did you eat that? Why did you choose that instead of something healthier to start with? this is a lot of sugar real quick. And like I sweat, like I had a full body sweat real quick. It wasn't a huge thing. It wasn't dripping, but I just felt all my pores like, whoa, wake back up. And I felt like a rush of goose flesh run down my body. And then I just felt this shitty, sugary treat sitting heavy in my stomach. And I was like, oh man, I have to process that. It struck me that I must have recalibrated my taste buds because that pineapple thing, instead of tasting pineapple tart, instead of tasting a little sweet, tasted shockingly, absurdly, offensively sugary and unhealthy. I ate it and I was like, that doesn't taste good because there's way too much sugar. And then my body was like, this is barely even food. That was especially fascinating to me. I could hear what my body was saying so much more clearly than when I eat food. Usually, if there's food and it smells good in front of me, I eat it, and all I can hear is if my belly is full. And then my belly's like, hey, I'm getting kind of full. But if it's good, I'll just keep eating it. Like, that doesn't matter to me at all. And my taste buds, too, they're like, this is very salty, I think, or this is very sweet, I think. But after just the 24 hours, that pineapple tart, my body immediately knew, oh, this is bullshit. Don't eat this. This isn't something you want in your body. And I pretty much listened to that clear message. I must have had them at some point because they were occasional treats, but I don't really remember eating those again. And that's the point that I started eating less sugar. Up until that point in my life, for whatever, 2.5, 3 decades, I just ate sugary. I bought a Snickers now and then, or a Twix, or in China, whatever they were selling, the candies, Yan Yan candies, or whatever they had, chocolate-filled koala bears or something I think they liked in China at the time. I was buying candy all the time. After I fasted, and I became fascinated by the fact that my taste buds had completely recalibrated after only 24 hours, I was like, oh, wow, that was such a strong message from my body declaring it did not like that much sugar, and it didn't even like sugar that much, that from that point on, I have steadily eaten less and less sugar. Except right now I'm eating a bunch of ice cream because I live like right next door to these guys that sell ice cream, so I do eat ice cream. 1 scoop of ice cream generally every day. I mean, in Laos, it was really bad. I was eating like 6 scoops of ice cream every day. But that's not even, that wouldn't have even entered my mind before I had fasted. I would be like, this much sugar is fine because it fits in my belly. And it didn't taste weird to me because I was eating that much sugar all the time. But when I finally gave my taste buds a break and then they ate some sugar, they were like, oh my God, gross. And it got even more interesting when I moved on to the 3-day fast. But before that, I just want to say that after I ate that pineapple pastry, I not only had that full body sweat, I also sneezed almost immediately. And I was like, where did that come from? I hadn't felt sick the entire day before, and then I like pretty violently sneezed, and my nose started running. It started running. And I was like, did that just happen because I ate a ball of pure sugar, basically? And that was also very, very interesting to me that something so apparently physical, like sneezing or a runny nose, appeared to be directly linked to the food I ate. If you are already familiar with the fact that what you eat determines how your body reacts, you are way ahead of me. Like, I was finding this all out for the first time. So, with all the stuff that happened, the recalibration taste buds, the physical symptoms, and just how I felt completely fine, I decided to go 1 week, and then after 1 week of eating normally, how I regularly did, I would try a 3-day fast. So during that week-long break I gave my body in between, just out of caution, my body felt healthier than it had in a while, but I didn't want to do a back-to-back fast, just in case. Just in case, really. So I waited 1 week, and in those 7 days, I ate normally, which was my 3 meals a day, plus snacks, yak jerky or stinky tofu or gambien doujiao, beers, every day basically, 7-Eleven sushi. I just ate a bunch of food, drank a bunch of beer, drank a bunch of water too. I've always drank a lot of water. And my stomach kept reporting to me, yeah, we don't need that. That food's unnecessary or it's not healthy. But I didn't listen to it, and I didn't even know I was supposed to listen to it because hearing such clear feedback from my stomach was new to me. But I paid very close attention to the times that I sneezed and the times I blew my nose and when I sweated. And especially sneezing and coughing and a runny nose and when I was blowing my nose or when I could feel the phlegm. Always right after I ate. Every single time. It was within a few minutes to maybe 10 minutes, but usually within like 1 to 3 minutes, I would get a runny nose or something like that after I ate. And it wasn't always a sugary food or an obviously unhealthy beverage like beer. Sometimes it was just the jiaozi, the pot stickers I ate. And then I would sneeze while I was eating them. I'd be like, is that too much food? What the heck? And it did turn out, for me, to just be the simple amount of extra food that seems to cause my symptoms. That whole 7 days in between fastings, I was paying a lot of attention to the physical symptoms of my body, and I noticed that they all were normal. I had those my entire life. Like, I would have to blow my nose every now and then, and I would sneeze sometimes. Sometimes I would cough, and sometimes I'd get a runny nose, and sometimes my nose would get stuffed, and I'd had phlegm in my throat. Like, all of these things are completely normal body things, and I had them my whole life. But I tried to remember back to that 24 hours I wasn't eating, and I was like, did I have a runny nose during that time? Did I sneeze that whole day? I'm not sure. Because I hadn't really taken meticulous notes, and by really I mean at all, taken any notes. I was just wanted to see what it was like to not eat, and it was totally fine. So the next time I fasted, after those 7 days were up and everything was back to normal, and I was carousing with 20 beers a day and all my chicken wings, I fasted for 3 days. And these are water fasting, but that is fasting. Water fasting has become popular to say, but fasting. I drank water during those 3 days. I taught my classes. I went jogging. I exercised. I rode my bike. And I watched YouTube food videos. That one where the Irish people try foods and are grossed out by them. I was like watching that YouTube channel for 3 hours. And then I was like, oh, am I watching this because it's all about eating food? But I was having a great time watching it, so I didn't really worry about it. But I didn't feel very hungry. Again, that first day, I did feel hungry at the time I was eating that week, like at 8 a.m. when I got up. I didn't get my jianbing, and then I was hungry right then, and then it went away at 8:30. And then I was hungry again at 12 because I didn't get my supermarket sushi, and then it was gone again. And then dinner came around, and my body was like, let's go get barbecue. And then 15 minutes later, it was like, whatever, and it was gone. So I proved to myself anyway that hunger cravings really are just a Pavlovian response to the time I usually put food into my mouth and body. But I was paying really close attention all 3 days, especially the first day, on how my body sneezed, coughed, ached, itched, just all of those normal body things. And I was shocked. I didn't sneeze. I didn't cough. I didn't have a runny nose. I didn't have a stuffed nose. I didn't itch, which I just mentioned because I just remembered it, but I didn't itch I didn't get itches on my body, which every now and then, you get an itch on the bottom of your arm or whatever the heck. I wasn't itchy during those 3 days that I wasn't eating. I'm sure there was something, like I must have brushed my hair out of my face or something, but it was noticeably less. Like, I didn't have to blow my nose for those 3 days. I didn't cough. It was so bizarre not sneezing and not having a stuffed nose, which it was winter in Beijing at the time, or it was fall maybe, but during cold weather, I'll just have phlegm in my nose. My nose will get stuffed very easily and it will run pretty easily. And for those 3 days, I had none of that. There was no running nose and my nose was not stuffed. I remember clearly being shocked by how much air I was taking in through my nose, because it's usually less air. Like, I was breathing very easily through my nose, and I was like, this is so great and bizarre because it seems to be tied to how much I eat. And is just eating inflaming parts of my tissues enough that I can breathe in air less easily? I also was breathing more slowly because my body was like chilling out. It didn't have to go to any work, metabolizing, processing any food, so it was slowing down. It was metabolizing everything slower. And my whole body felt calmer. And I was like, yeah, okay. And on the third day that I didn't blow my nose, I didn't sneeze, cough, have a runny nose, itch. I didn't itch. Oh, I didn't fart. I didn't burp. I won't say at all, but I'll say near zero for those 3 days. On the third day, I was like, okay, well, clearly, at least some of those normal bodily functions are due to what I'm putting inside me. I would have sworn that a stuffy nose is a stuffy nose is a stuffy nose. It's a thing that happens if you got a nose. But if I'm not putting food into my system, I don't get stuffy noses, and I don't sneeze, and I don't have to blow my nose. So one of the things I noticed was that I could smell my underarm odor very strongly, and I ended up taking like 5 showers a day while I was fasting because right after I took a shower, more smell would come out. And if I'm just with my arms closed, just watching YouTube, I could start to smell it as it got stronger. My sense of smell was definitely more sensitive. And I was like, okay. And I just went and took another shower. And I would just take a bunch of showers until the smell went away, which it did go away and didn't come back as strongly or as frequently. Very interesting. I don't know about that. I'm just talking about what happened. But I did notice that smell more, and I took more showers as a consequence. I felt a little high still, fuzzy, loopy, I said, like in the first one, but it felt the exact same. I didn't get more high by the end of the third day than I did in the first 12 hours of not eating. It was just like, I don't want to say fuzzy because I was so clear. It was comfortable. A body high is a very good way to put it. My entire body was just a little energized. Like my skin was all just a little excited. Like it was just happy to be skin. And everything felt a little bit nicer. And it was really interesting. So I felt like I had a little bit of a body high, but I wasn't feeling sick or nauseous or uncomfortable in any way. After that first day of a few hunger things, I think I also wanted breakfast the second day, like even less briefly. 8 o'clock I wanted to eat, and then 8:05, 8:10, and I was totally forgot about eating again. Didn't have any physical, normal human symptoms like blowing your nose. I was just hanging out with a very comfortable body high, but super minimal. My mind was perfectly clear. I would teach a few classes a day. I'd feel sort of a rush when I was moving, I noticed. When I was in the class moving around, my body was like, heck yeah, let's do it, let's move around. And it was like kind of excited to be moving around. And then as soon as I would stop and sit down, my body would be like, oh yeah, let's relax now. Let's stop moving. This is great. Like it was just really excited to be in whatever state I was doing. It was a very interesting feedback process from my body that I wasn't used to. Whatever it was doing, it was like into it. When I was running around corralling my students, it was like, this is so much fun. And then when I would sit down and watch YouTube, it was like, oh, let's just watch YouTube for 3 hours. And I was totally into the video. So it was a great time. And just having this body high, just tingling all over, like super minimal, microdosing a body high was very comfortable and fun for me. And after school, I hung out with people like normal. I just didn't eat and didn't drink beer. And they asked me, I just told them, I was like, I'm trying fasting. I'm just seeing how it goes. And they're like, okay, cool. And the evening was totally normal after that. And they just asked what I had seen so far. And I was like, I haven't farted in like 60 hours. It's crazy. And I haven't spit. I haven't had phlegm in just as long. So they were interested, but it didn't really kill my social life. And I was only doing it for a few days anyway. So it was just this interesting thing. I just hung out, smelled the good smells, felt like I was getting sustenance from just the smells like the Roman gods are supposed to. You cook the meat for them on a spit and they imbibe the odor. And that's enough sustenance. I just inhaled the scent of hot pot. So 3 days passed very easily. And after 3 days, I was like, okay, that's 72 hours. It's done. And that whole day, I was like looking around. I was like, okay, what do I eat? And as I was looking around, I was like, I don't really want to eat anything. And I was looking at all stuff, and I just couldn't decide on what I wanted to eat exactly. And I still had normal, extra American body fat that I was like, I definitely have more calories here. But it's been 3 days. I'm introducing my body to fasting. I'll eat something. And so I think I decided on a jianbing or something. But I ate it, and my body was like, yeah, that's cool. I didn't start with a huge sugary thing. But my body was also like, we don't need it, though. It's fine. And I was like, oh, shoot, I didn't need it. And as soon as I ate it, I wanted to have gone farther with fasting. My body was instantly reassuring me that I hadn't really needed food again yet. But I started eating again, and my body got used to me forcing food into it all the time again. But now I was even more so less interested in sugary snacks. And it wasn't the strength of the flavor either, which I found interesting, because I like strong flavors a lot. So I ate some dishes that are particularly strong, like ganbian doujiao, very salty, just very strong flavors, Sichuan peppercorn. And I loved that. That tasted great. It tasted like too much food, but it tasted very good. But every time I would try a candy again, my body was like, nope, you don't need this anymore. And there was no time limit on it. It was just like, we don't really need to do sugar anymore. If you don't want to shove it into your mouth, there's no reason to eat any of those sugary snacks. That's about the time I stopped drinking soda, which I would have it now and then during lunch, but I quickly realized that I didn't want soda. I was just drinking it out of habit. Drinking soda didn't make me feel good and gave me symptoms like a runny nose or sneezing. And that's the time I stopped buying candy bars when I wanted a snack. If I wanted a snack, I would get something savory, but I largely stopped eating sugar. And ice cream in China is terrible, so I wasn't lulled by ice cream as I am in other places. Hey, if anyone knows good ice cream in China, hit me up. I want to travel back there, and I would try a recommendation. But I have tried ice cream across China for a long time, almost a decade, and I haven't said wow to any of them yet. So hit me up with a recommendation if you have one. But that 3 days, I wasn't sure after 24 hours, but definitely after that 3 days, I was like, okay, things have recalibrated. My taste buds are going back and they're telling me things way more strongly. My stomach is letting me know what it wants in it. My taste buds right away are telling me that's not something you need to eat. That's not something you want to eat. Eat something else. It felt like a reset. I also, speaking of my stomach, I wasn't as interested on eating past my sense of being full, which was so clear, the clearest I had ever consciously been aware of it. After those 3 days of fasting, when I went to eat hot pot the first time, I ate And it was like there was a percentage counter, and I hit a very clear red line in my stomach, and my body almost said in words, "That's enough food. You don't need to eat any more food for an indefinite period of time. You have plenty of food in your stomach for us to work with right now and metabolize into energy." It was so strange how clearly I heard that from my stomach and my body. I think I just kept eating because it tasted so good, but it was very clear to me that I did. And I did stop for the first time, I think, in my life. I saved leftovers before I was too full to eat any more. Because there's this thing called a robing, and it's a meat pie, a Chinese meat pie, and I always ate that, all of it, every single time I ordered one. Just like every time I got a pizza in the States, I ate the whole pizza instead of putting it away, unless I was so full I was going to throw up. Then I would save leftovers. But for the first time in my life, I was eating until I hit that very clear red line. My stomach was like, "You're full of food." And then I put it in a container and put the container in the fridge and saved food. And I was like, that is weird. It's weird you've never done this before, but it feels weird saving food that you could eat, but you know you don't have to. It was such a bizarre reset for my stomach. And that red line was just right there. So I just didn't have to guess, like, well, maybe I should go in case I go jogging. My body was like, nope, you don't. You don't need that. That made me start paying attention to the amount of calories that was in the food I was eating, because I was eating thousands of calories a day. If the crepe that I had was, let's say, 300 calories, absolute minimum, probably double that. And then I was having a lunch of a big meat pie for myself, plus a Coke. 7-Eleven sushi probably had that after my breakfast. If my friend went to eat, I'd get a bowl of soup after class from the little mom and pop shop. I love the tomato egg soup they have, and that's shavings of dough that become noodles when they cook it. And I was like, okay, that's like 3,000 calories by lunchtime for me. Like, that's not a crazy thing. And then at dinner, we would all start drinking beer, which are easily 150 calories each, and Chinese beers are all 600 milliliters, so very likely more than 200 calories each one. And I was having 10 of those a day very regularly. So that's 2,000 calories just from the beer in a day. And I had another 2,000 to 3,000 in the first half of the day, and that's not even mentioning dinner, which is another who knows how many calories. But let's say it was like a regular day and I just had my breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the beers, which was very normal. I had a crepe in the morning, and then the meat pie for lunch, and then I went to Hot Pot. At Hot Pot, I was known for eating just constant. I just eated. Oh my God, I just said eated. That's staying in. I just ate until the night was over. Bring one more plate of lamb meat or pig meat. No, it was usually beef in that time. So, 再来一盘牛肉，再来一盘菠菜. Bring me one more plate of beef, bring me one more plate of spinach. And this was very well known. If I went to Hot Pot, after everyone else had stopped eating, I would just every 20, 30 minutes order one more plate of beef and one more plate of spinach until everybody was like, okay, it's time to go. And that's when I would stop eating. That was normal for me. So I don't know how many thousands of calories I was eating every day, but after that 3-day fast, and then I could feel that hard red line, I was just flabbergasted by how much extra food I was eating every day. And that's when I looked up how many calories were in beer. That's how I know the number now of generally 150 for a 330 milliliter can of beer. And like I said, Chinese beers are not 330 like American beers. Chinese beers are 600 milliliters, a lower alcohol content, but that's almost double the volume of a malted beverage. I was shocked doing research on beer when I came across the phrase liquid bread. I was drinking my daily calories just from beer very often, and then thousands of calories on top of that. So when I would eat the crepe after that 3-day fast, I felt the crepe hit the red line, and it was halfway done, like being processed by the time I got to lunchtime. And I was like, well, really? I only need to eat a little bit more for lunch to be like at my full capacity, which I found out was normal full, and my entire life I had always eaten until overflowing. That's what I thought full was. Eating until I literally could not anymore. I was like, oh yeah, now I'm full, because I was actually volumetrically full. It's funny to think about that now. So I would say, oh, so half the crepe is still there, but just to check, I would get a full plate of the tomato egg soup, and when I would drink that, I felt it go over the red line. I was like, yeah, okay, so I know exactly how much my body wants to eat. And like if it's a super calorically dense food like the crepe, my body's like, that's definitely enough. And if it's maybe less dense like that soup, the line will go up a little so I could have more volume. Like it was just so stunningly clear feedback from my body of how much of what it wanted to ingest. That still blows my mind just thinking about that first revelatory experience where I was like, oh my God, I don't think I've ever listened to my body before, and now I can listen to my body. So it felt like a total reset for me. And I was like, wow, I haven't burped or farted or sneezed or coughed for 3 days. I haven't itched for 3 days. The itching was really interesting. I was like, then what is itching? Is it just a nervous tick, or is it a localized inflammation from like a Snickers? Like, why do I not itch if I don't eat? What is causing the itching normally? And not frantic scratching, but just the regular everyday, oh, a little itchy right here. You scratch it, goes away. But I didn't have any of those during those 3 days. And I was less congested for about 24 hours after I started eating again. So after those 3 days, I ate and I still felt like I was fasting. I was getting most of those benefits, except my stomach felt like heavier. It was like, hey man, I was like, yeah, I know, I don't know. There's hot pot in front of me. I don't know what to do. Sorry. But I still was clearly less congested than normal, like no phlegm or blowing my nose or anything for a whole day. I didn't sneeze after I ate or anything. So I waited a week, and then I tried it again for 7 days. I fasted for 7 days straight. And that is still the longest I've ever fasted because I moved on to 1 meal a day after that, and that I get to eat more that way. I'll do a different thing about 1 meal a day. Some people call it an episode who work in podcasts, but me, call it a thing. I'll do a separate episode about 1 meal a day, which is what I'm still doing today. But here I was on a 7-day fast for the first time. And again, during that week that I was eating normally between the 3-day and the 7-day fast, I was burping and farting, obviously, digestion, sure. But I was also sneezing a lot, and I was coughing a lot, and I was itching every now and then, and my nose was getting stuffed. I had runny noses again. I was getting all the normal, I have to blow my nose a few times a day, just like all those normal human things that I didn't have the first or second time I fasted. And I had all those. I wasn't sick. I just had those normal body functions that people have, that I have when I eat. The runny noses and sneezes didn't start up right away for the first day of beer and hot pot, but they did start back up as the days went on and I started eating how I used to. Then I started fasting again for the week after 7 days of normal eating. I was like, started my week-long fast, and same thing. I felt good. I felt pretty much normal. I had that super minimal body high for 7 days straight. I worked the entire week. I was worried about that the first and second time I fasted, that I wouldn't have the energy to work if I was fasting, but that never turned, nope, I always had plenty of energy. So I worked, I think, 5 days that week, and that was during a weekend too, Saturday and Sunday, which are the heaviest times. So that's like an 8-hour day, but I was fine the whole time. I hung out with friends afterward. I started getting random compliments on my skin and eyes. I know how that sounds. One parent stopped me after class, and we usually talked after class. Like, his son was pretty good and he spoke pretty good English, so we got on. We just chatted after class sometimes. And during that week, I think it was like the 4th or 5th day, and he was talking to me, and he like cocked his head to the side real quick and then said, "Wow, your eyes look like really clear today." And no one's ever said that to me in my life. And I was like, "Oh, what do you mean?" He was like it's all, there's completely white around and then very bright eyes. And I don't know, I looked in the mirror. They did look better than usual. They weren't red or tired or anything. Like, they looked good. But also, I want to note that Chinese people definitely notice skin, flushing, the whites of your eyes. They notice a lot of those basic physical signs that a Western society does not pay any attention to. So it does make sense that he would notice if there was that kind of difference, especially since I was like drinking every day usually, and my eyes were probably bloodshot half the time because I was partying all night and then teaching in the morning. But that's the only time I ever got that compliment. And it was so apparent that a normal parent guy that I talked to all the time felt the impetus to remark, "Your eyes look very clear and bright today." And I definitely felt physically better. Like, my body, like my skin felt way smoother. That was a big one. The skin on my face, like the pores closed up from potholes into a cross stitch. Is that a good analogy? Probably not, because there's needles there. My skin felt very, very smooth, like much smoother than it ever had been, especially on my face, on the cheekbones. I was like, well, it's not bumpy at all. It's as smooth as the skin on my underside of my forearm, like very smooth skin. So that was really interesting how rapidly my skin became smoother and more healthy. I had the same thing. My smell was a little stronger. I could smell my underarm. I just showered more, and that went away. But it was a very interesting week because, again, I felt good the whole time. I could work. I could do my projects. I had fun exercising or relaxing. I was not sneezing. I was not blowing my nose. I was not burping, coughing, itching, stuffy nose. I didn't have to breathe in through a stuffy nose or anything. It was just all fine. Like, it was great for a week. After a week, I was like, okay, it's been a week. Let's start eating. Except I knew, like, you're going to eat, and it happened. I ate something, and again, I felt, you could have just kept fasting. You're fine. I still had plenty of weight on my stomach, because the amount of calories your body uses, like the amount of calories your body processes while you're fasting, decreases the longer you fast. So we'll just say the first day your body metabolized 2,000 calories from your reserves of fat. The second day it'll be more efficient and harvest 2,050 calories from that same amount of fat. The next, 2,100. It'll just become more efficient at metabolizing fat the longer you fast. You'll still drop weight quick, but you'll be losing less fat per day because your body is more efficiently metabolizing calories from your weight reserves. It gets more efficient at processing the energy from fat, apparently, is what the articles say that I read. So I still had plenty of fat even after a week, because after a week, if I took 2,000 calories a day, like, a normal body, 14,000 calories, that's a little over 3 pounds of fat. That's not a lot of fat. I easily had 15, 20 extra pounds of fat, and probably more, but I easily had that at the time. And I only used up 3 of them over the week. I'm guessing, because I'll say I used 2,000 calories, but 3.5 pounds of fat out of the 15 I had was a week of fasting. It was, very interesting. And it was cool to lose a few pounds. Like, my body, I did notice that I could because I had so rapidly lost weight that walking upstairs felt a little easier for me. Like I remembered in high school, I could just like bounce upstairs. And then when I was an adult, I couldn't bounce upstairs. But when I was fasting and a few of those pounds dropped away, when I was going up the stairs, I felt like the spring in my step again. And I was like, oh, maybe that's because I'm carrying a whole bunch of that weight on my waist. And that's why I don't spring in my step anymore. So I did feel like I didn't need to eat after I broke my fast after those 7 days. I was like, yep, you could have gone 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever. But I felt healthy already. I had established that fasting definitely did something positive for my body, and that I wouldn't go crazy with it, that I could control it, and that I felt much better feedback from my body. I certainly feel that I understand my body better because I decided to fast. And again, that's not an endorsement. I'm just sharing what showed up for me. I'm very glad that I understand my body better. And I'm a guy, I don't have to deal with the insane pressure on a woman, so I cannot imagine the stress that comes with just having images of literally impossibly shaped women thrown at your face all the day and having a woman's body. So yeah, don't take this as any kind of endorsement on what everyone should do by any stretch of the imagination. And especially if you're not a guy, do not think that I am endorsing anything that women should do because fasting is whatever the heck. This is just my story, my journey through fasting that I learned from personal lessons. I liked fasting. I got a lot of benefits from it. I learned, like I said, I love learning. I learned so much about my body, and I could hear my body talking to me for the first time. It just changed so much for me. I like the body high too. If I stop eating for 12, 15 hours or something, I get that little tingly, feeling, the whole body high thing, and that just stays until I eat again. So I do like that a lot. I liked that it was totally safe. I liked that fasting reset my tastes and appetites. I liked that it was safe and the scientific known thing also, and I could be like, hey, did you know fasting? I did like having that little secret piece of knowledge. I should admit to that. I loved no burping, farting. I loved no sneezing, no phlegm. I love not blowing my nose. I don't like having to do that. And until I started fasting, I would deal with a runny nose for hours or days. Now I can get rid of them after a couple hours by fasting. And if I fast for a day, they usually don't come back. If they do, I just fast for another day and then they're gone. I do not want to deal with runny noses. So I was like, I gotta keep experimenting with my body, because if there's a way that I can eat what I want to and not sneeze and have to blow my nose all the time, I gotta figure that out, which eventually I did. 1 meal a day. I'm not gonna keep you in suspense. 1 meal a day does that for me. But for fasting, I liked that I could exercise and work and relax without any apparent loss of function. I liked the compliments I got. I got that compliment on my eye, but those days, everyone said something. I know one of the Chinese assistants told me how smooth my skin looked. And that's when I noticed my skin the first time during fasting. I was like, holy cow, it is super smooth. It's never looked that smooth before. So I liked a lot of the things, a lot of the physical things about fasting, the positive developments, and I also just loved learning about it and learning about my body and listening to my body more. And that got me trying out other diets like Atkins, which I also liked, very restrictive. Then 1 meal a day, which is where I currently sit, what works for me now. I don't generally fast unless I'm sick anymore. If I get sick and it's bad, not even bad. If I have a runny nose, which is the thing in my life I hate the most. Also, I haven't had a runny nose that doesn't respond to fasting in, a decade? I don't know, long time. I fast. If I ever start to have a runny nose or a cold, I'll just fast and then that cold goes away. And especially the runny nose. The runny nose stops running, which is such a valuable trick to have in my back pocket. Sometimes I don't fast, and I just let it go because one meal a day pretty much deals with all that stuff anyway. I'll still have maybe a stuffed nose when I'm doing one meal a day. If I drink way too much beer or eat way too much sugar or just eat way, way, way too much for a long time. But as long as I'm eating normally and I don't drink 12 beers in a row, I still get to eat all the stuff I like and I don't have a runny nose or all the other, I'm not sneezing all the time like I do. I'll talk about one meal a day in another episode in detail. Excruciating detail. I think this is the longest episode so far. So if I'm sick, I will still do total fasts, and that deals with all of the symptoms immediately, and it seems to deal with common colds and anything like that pretty rapidly also. If I feel really bad for whatever reason, I will fast until that problem is alleviated. I mean, I haven't really had that in a very long time now. I haven't had a cold that's bummed me out or a stomach virus that's debilitated me or anything in years. I know I had a cold while I was on a bender. I got a cold after I drank 20 beers a day and ate constantly on a break while I was on vacation. And by vacation, I mean drink too many beers for several days and eat food constantly. And I was like, yeah, of course you're getting sick. Look at what you're doing to yourself. But it was really fun. But in terms of like normal every day, I can't remember the last time I was like, oh my gosh, a cold is coming on. There's nothing I can do about it. Yeah, no, it's been a really long time since I've had a fever or a runny nose. At least one whose symptoms doesn't immediately respond to fasting. As in years. I did write this down in my notes. I ate a bunch of sugar one day. Maybe that was in Laos, where I was eating like the 6 friggin' ice creams during my one meal a day. But then I fasted for a day, and after a couple hours, the runny nose stops when I fast. So it stopped, and then the cold was totally gone the next day, and I went and ate ice cream again. I have that written down in my journal that I did take for the 7-day fasting. But I just have this little, I don't know where the original one is. I just have a few notes here. The runny nose, I know I mentioned, it's such a big one for me. If you are furious at a runny nose that will not stop, but you were like, I'm totally healthy, why won't this runny nose stop? You can give it a try. I mean, it works for me so fast. I just stop eating, and a couple hours later at most, my runny noses go away. 100% every single time that works. For me. Other people tried fasting after I went the full week, and one of the people who tried it was like, this is pretty easy if you like video games. You just have water next to you at all times, throw on The Witcher Wild Hunt, like throw yourself into the game. If you like video games, you know what I'm talking about. You'll emerge 7 days later having fasted, and he got a lot of the health benefits. He was on the can all the time. He had a really bad digestive tract anyway, and this vastly improved his time on the toilet. He was also remarking, he was like, I can't believe, I didn't blow my nose for a week. And he's a smoker too, so he was smoking and drinking coffee, but he still reported pretty much all of the same alleviation of symptoms, normal human symptoms that I have talked about so many times already. In excruciating detail. Thanks for sticking with me. It was great talking about this again. I do like fasting, and I do use it if I ever feel a runny nose, or if I sneeze, I'll be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't eat today. But with one meal a day, that's not really an issue anymore. So keep an eye out for the one meal a day episode. I'll talk about how I basically get all the benefits except the body high, which I do miss, but I still get to eat every day if I just have an eating window with one meal a day. Have a great rest of your day. Definitely let me know if you have any stories about fasting or one meal a day or any dietary stuff. I'm always interested in that stuff. I have mine that work for me, but I'm interested in hearing healthy ways people eat. As long as you're healthy and it's having a positive effect on your body, I'm keen to hear about it. Thank you for listening. You can reach me at bitofarambler@gmail.com or any social media, and I will talk to you soon.